Hi, I'm Dustin Abbott. I've been doing power station reviews from Bluetti, Jackery, other similar companies for about 4.5 years now at this point. And over that period of time, I've seen a lot of what I would call refinements in that they do similar things to what they've done before, but they just do them increasingly better with more sophistication. And that's obviously a key part of the industry, is to continue to improve along the way. But what I can't say that I've seen is a lot of genuinely new features, a completely novel or new way of doing some of these things that we're looking for from these power stations. But Bluetti is changing all of that, starting with this Bluetti AC180T model, and that they're moving to a truly modular system. And a modular system not just in the battery packs, as we'll talk about in just a moment, but also expanding what is done within that universe. And with an upcoming new portable refrigerator / cooler that will be the first of these kind of other accessories to run off of these modular batteries that are a part of the power station system. Rather than relying on expansion units as before, this modular battery can then be used in a variety of other accessories. They can be hot swapped, and you can get virtually an endless supply of them. And so I think that it really kind of expands the potential of what you can do with these kind of units for things like camping, overlanding, and then even in power outage type situations. So at the heart of the AC180T is two of these modular units. And so they're both rated at 716 watt hours. As noted, they are hot swappable, and they just slide into the top of the unit and they'll click in like that. And there's two of them in a base. So it's a total of 1,433 watt hours. Now, in that sense, if you have a lot of these batteries, it is pretty much endlessly expandable, but you can only run two at a time, which obviously is going to be the limiting principle there, though the fact that you can hot swap them means that you can continue to power various things without ever actually having a power interruption. The batteries are rated, as is pretty typical these days with these lithium iron phosphate batteries. They're rated for at least 3,500 charge cycles to 80%, which means that you can have 10 years of daily recharge and still be at 80% capacity of the battery. So in other words, you're going to be able to use these for a very long time. The inverter itself is extremely powerful. It's 1,800 watts of pure sine wave power, and then you can also switch into the power lift mode that I've detailed previously with other Bluetti products that allows you to run certain things at up to a 2,700 watt draw. Now, you need to be careful at the kind of things you power. If you're talking about things that are using like a heating coil, no problem there. But if you're using something with more sophisticated electronics, for example, a refrigerator or an air conditioning unit, you might want to be careful with that because you can actually shorten the lifespan of the motors on that if you're not giving them full power. Because of the hot swappable situation, you can continue to operate with only one battery in, though the overall inverter power will drop to 1,200 watts. And so you can see here I was powering a kettle that is rated at 1,500 watts. I was powering that while I swapped out and took out one of the batteries. What I found is that for about 30 seconds it continued to run the kettle, and it was only then that with that prolonged draw that was greater than 1,200 watts that it actually tripped a circuit in the battery management system and it shut down at that point. But the fact that it continued to run something that drew more than 1,200 watts for a bit of period of time shows that if you're running anything in and around that area, you're going to be just fine at that point. This not only puts out a lot of power, but it also draws in a lot of power. It is the fastest recharge that I've seen. You can charge up to 1,440 watts off of AC power in the turbo mode, so that is sucking a lot of electrons very quickly. Now, if you're going to solar input, it's still limited at 500 watts, and so it takes a little bit longer in that regard. There is no IP rating on this, and so to me that's always a misstep in these units. You're going to use them outdoors. Now, there is a 5-year warranty on everything here, and so obviously that is helpful. Now, when I saw this particular picture in their marketing, I thought, wow, that's a very plucky young lady as she begins to lift one of these units, because the truth of the matter is that this guy is heavy. I put it on my scale and I saw that it was fully loaded. It was 62.5 pounds. And you take one of the batteries out, it's 43.5 pounds. You took both batteries out, it's 24.6 pounds. And so I actually, as I looked at that picture, and I thought, my wife would never in a million years be carrying that along, certainly not with a smile on her face. But the point that they were making is the fact that even though this unit is large and it is heavy, it is a little bit more portable than what, say, the standard AC180 would be, in that you can remove these battery packs. And so every time that you remove one of these battery packs, you're removing about 19 pounds from the equation. And after you have removed both of the battery packs, it obviously is becoming a much lighter unit at that point that can be carried by someone who might have a little bit less physical strength. So the advantage here is that, yes, while you might have to make more trips, it is still very usable, particularly for the size of the unit. What is that size? It's 15.4 inches by 11 inches in depth by 15.6 inches. And so that's 390 by 180 by 395 millimeters. And so it's physically large, but again, particularly if you're removing those batteries, it is movable at that point. It does have integrated handles on either side. That is the preferred carrying point. There is no LED light. If you're accustomed to these having kind of a light source on them, that is not something that this unit is equipped with. On the side here, you'll find your input ports here, and while there's a reset circuit there, and then you'll just see a standard AC input. There is no external power brick, and that is great because it does allow for things like UPS functionality, where you can have it as an uninterrupted power source. So if you have delicate things that you want to protect, you can hook them into this and run it as a UPS. On the front, we do have a screen with good readouts, lots of information there. It's easy to use. And through the app, you can set up and control how long you want that screen to stay lit up and how quickly you want it to power down. So as far as the output ports here, there is no wireless pad on the top, obviously because of the hot swapping of the batteries there at the top. We have 4 different 120 volt grounded plugs, 1800 watts total. Remember, it's not each one of these rated at 1800 watts. It's a total of 1800 watts across them. We have 2 USB-A ports here in the center. These are rated a little bit higher than what I typically see. These are 5 volt, 3 amp outputs, and so that's a total of 15 watts of output. I typically see them at around 12 or 13 watts of output, and so nice to see there, just a little bit of extra juice flowing through there. There's also 2 USB-C ports that are rated at 100 watts. They have the eMark chip, and so that they will, detect the appropriate amount of power to be sending out for your various delicate electronics that you're going to connect up to that. We also have the 12 volt, 10 amp kind of cigarette lighter style car outlet there. And then, of course, as far as our input here on the front, the lone input on the front is our input for DC. And so that's either for car charging and then also for solar. It is the DC 7909 standard plug. And I'm really glad to see Bluetti starting to standardize around that. What I saw in the early years is it seems like every one of these power stations had a slightly different input plug for solar. So I'm glad to see, and even there's been some variation even in the Bluetti models that I have reviewed. Fortunately, the most recent ones that I have reviewed, last about 4, have all used the same DC 7909 plug input, and so I'm really glad to see that standardization. Also there on the side, there is a grounding connector if you want to use that. Some of the features here include the Bluetooth app control. It allows you to do a variety of things, control the speed in which you're going to, for example, charge at. So if you have a silent mode, you have a standard mode, and then you have a turbo mode. And so what I saw in those various charge options is I saw in silent mode, you were still drawing 734 watts, which is pretty impressive. That's a really fast charge for being in the silent mode, and it's able to run really quietly and smoothly. None of the fans engaged. And so that is very, very useful. You could still charge it quite fast through that. In the standard mode, I saw 915 watts, which is really, really quick for that. And then in the turbo mode, you can run it at as fast as 1,444 watts. I would recommend only doing that as you need it. However, my experience with batteries is that you only want to kind of fast charge them if you absolutely have to, because I do think you're going to get a slight degradation of long-term battery life if you're constantly really forced charging it. But obviously there's situations where you're in a rush, you need to get it charged up quickly, and absolutely use it in those settings. That's what it's there for. Now, if you're charging in the turbo mode, you can go from 0 to 80% in just 45 minutes, which is obviously really useful. And you can get the full charge in as little as 70 minutes, up to 100%. That's going to be that's huge for having a large unit and needing to be able to charge it up quickly. I've seen in some units in the past where I'm trying to rapidly charge them up, and it's just hours and hours to get them charged because, you know, the old charging brick style, you would often be limited at a 200 watt input. And so, I mean, it is amazing to be able to charge these so quickly. You can run firmware updates of various things through this. I also love to be able to remotely monitor if I'm actually solar charging outside, for example. I can just look at the Bluetooth app and see from inside, you know, what kind of rate I'm getting, if I need to go and reposition the solar panels, you know, how much longer it needs to be out there, if it's finished, all of those things. And so I really appreciate the Bluetooth control. Having the UPS function is obviously great, and so you have typically about a 15 millisecond changeover from, you know, the loss of power to it switching over to the battery power here. So very useful. Now, the main feature here obviously is the modular batteries, and then also, of course, it's kind of incomplete, and yet the cooler unit, the portable refrigerator unit, is going to come out in 2025, early 2025 at some point. And so obviously I can't review the whole ecosystem yet. This is the first step of you know, a chain of products at this point. And so, I mean, there's not a lot of additional features over the AC180 outside of the modular battery component and the fact that you do get more power between those batteries. So as far as the tests that I ran in testing the unit along the way, I've been using it consistently for about 6 weeks at this point. And basically everything that I hooked up to it, it could run. And so my 1500 watt kettle, obviously falling under the 1800 watts, it was no problem at all. I mean, no hiccup, nothing at all. I used an 1100 watt blender, a 1000 watt blender. I used a toaster. All of these things, zero problem. Even though my wife's hair dryer, blow dryer is rated at 1,875 watts, you know, technically a little bit above the 1800 watt rating, the fact of the matter is that it doesn't consistently draw 1,850 watts. There's the initial, you know, startup where it jolts and draws a little bit more, but it's settled into around the 1,700 watt range, and I could run it endlessly, you know, until the battery is expired. No problems there. And so, I mean, I had no issues with running any of the things that I hooked up. I use it as a mobile power station for doing some construction work, you know, charging my batteries, running some tools. Again, zero problems with that. This inverter is really strong. It can do a lot of things. One morning we had a power outage and I woke to the fact that there was no power in the house, but it was no problem. I hooked up the AC180T to a variety of things. You know, I was able to do toast, I did smoothies, I, you know, did my morning tea, all of those things, and obviously zero issues because it has no issues in running those things. And because it has such a large battery capacity, I could do all those things and still had a lot of power left over for a variety of other things. So let's talk about some things that I like. I like the idea, at least here, of the battery swap tech. It is great, it's unique. The idea of being able to have more of those battery packs to be able to continually kind of run this, for example, in a power outage situation, is really useful. I also think that the idea of the portable fridge, as soon as I saw that and using these modular batteries for other components, I thought that's a really clever idea. We'll see if they've actually implemented it well, but at least the proof of concept that's on their website is really intriguing, and we'll see how much that it costs and whether or not it's still intriguing after I see the price tag. I love the fact that the inverter is powerful enough that it can pretty much run everything. And so there's very few things in your household that this cannot run, if anything, at this point. I like the fact that you have the very fast charging capability. So if you do need to, maybe if you're in between, camping and you have access to AC for a little bit while, the fact that you can charge this up very quickly is extremely useful, and it kind of eliminates one of the big problems with having a big unit. I like Bluetti's power lift technology. So it just opens the scope of the things that you can run. Again, so long as you're careful about the kinds of things you're running in power lift mode. There's a good mix here, nothing exceptional, but a good mix of AC and DC ports, and so that you can power a lot of things at the same time. The app control, I think the Bluetti app is pretty well implemented at this point. I find it very useful in the ability to remotely monitor things, do firmware updates. They've just really simplified a lot of the process. And the app itself is not difficult to use, so I appreciate that. I appreciate having UPS in such a big, powerful unit. So there's many more things that you could theoretically protect through this, and that is very, very useful. How about some things that I don't like? Well, I don't like the fact that there is no IP rating for this. I never quite understand why units that are designed for camping, for example, don't have some kind of IP rating to them, because it just seems to stand to reason. This is something that people will use outdoors, and so it should have some kind of weather protection built into it. Another thing that I personally was looking for that doesn't seem to be yet addressed, though Bluetti is aware of it and I think they are working on a solution, is that I would love to see the actual modular battery units, they're called B70s by the way, to be able to be separately charged via solar. And I think it would be incredibly useful, for example, in a power outage situation, if you had extra of these batteries, if you could have them outside being charged via solar while you're powering things on the inside of the building, or even while camping, same kind of concept. And so that you could have basically an endless supply of power. And right now, there is no direct way to charge these. They need to be charged from within the AC180T unit. And so that's something that I would like to see addressed. The third thing is more of it's a problem at the moment, it won't be a problem long term. And that is that the individual separate batteries, the battery packs themselves, and the portable fridge, those all got delayed. I think the original plan was that they would all be released within a month or two window of the AC180T itself. For whatever reason, they've been delayed until 2025, and the pricing is currently unknown on those things. And so in many ways, it's hard for me to tell you that this is great as far as the pricing or the whole idea. Ecosystem will be great if I really don't know how much you're going to pay for that. As it stands right now, the AC180T is a great value, at least in the US. It's currently on sale for about $1,000 US, which was the same price as the AC180 unit. And obviously this is adding some extra versatility and more battery capacity. And so that makes it a strong value. For whatever reason here in Canada, it's not at nearly as good a value. It's currently on sale for $1,599, which is a much larger premium than I typically see as a variation between US and Canadian pricing. So I can wholeheartedly recommend it at the moment in the US, a little bit less so if you're here in Canada right now. My conclusion is, as it stands, the Bluetti AC180T is a mild upgrade to the standard AC180 unit. And I say it's a mild upgrade in that as you can use it right now, it does have more battery capacity, almost 300 watt hours more battery capacity. And if you're in the US, it's the same price. But the promise is there for it to be a much more appealing unit in the future. And that is when the additional batteries come, if the additional expansion batteries are reasonably priced, if the fridge works as advertised, it becomes a much more appealing option at that point. As it stands, I feel like my conclusions are a little bit incomplete at this point because I don't know and you don't know what the final answer on those things is going to be. I like the unit just fine as it stands, but what's most intriguing to me is the potential of what it could be in the future. And so you're going to have to determine for yourself whether or not that is a risk worth taking right now. I'm Dustin Abbott. If you want more information, you can check out the links in the description that will take you to the listings on the Bluetti site where you can get more information on that. There are buying links there as well. As always, thanks for watching. Have a great day and let the light in.